We begin in Iran, where the country's Revolutionary Guard has launched retaliatory strikes on U.S. military sites in Kuwait, Jordan and Bahrain. That's after Washington carried out a 7th consecutive night of attacks on Iranian targets. For more on the rising escalation between U.S. and Iran, we are joined by Vice Admiral John W. Miller, retired commanded U.S. Naval Forces Central Command, and the U.S. 5th Fleet from Annapolis, Maryland. Thanks for joining us. So the United States has now carried out 7 consecutive nights of strikes, while Iran has expanded attacks on US military sites across the Gulf. So from a military perspective, how do you assess the trajectory of this conflict?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think we're on a trajectory now where there'll be continued conflict through a negotiating phase and into some sort of a negotiated agreement where the United States will continue to pressure Iran and the regime to ensure that they no longer are interdicting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, to ensure that they are going to sit down and devise a procedure by which the United States or the international community removes the nuclear enriched material from the country of Iran. What we're seeing with the strikes that are currently ongoing is an expansion on the part of the United States to not only interdict the command and communications towers, the weapons launchers, the ability of Iran to conduct its very malign activity in the Strait of Hormuz, but we're also seeing the United States interdicting Iran's ability to make money through the blockade, but in expanded strikes, their ability to receive war material from other countries such as Russia or China. And so some of the railways and road infrastructure that lead to Bandar Abbas in the vicinity of the Strait of Hormuz, but also railways and road infrastructure that lead out of the country that are overland supply routes have now been destroyed. Some of those rail bridges, which preclude Russia or China or anyone else from getting war material into Iran. And so there's a lot of military pressure that's being placed on the regime now. Add to that the economic pressure caused by the blockade, and then add to that hopefully a more international diplomatic effort to get the Iranians to agree to stop bombing people in the Strait of Hormuz, but also to stop bombing civilian targets in particular in the region, especially in Kuwait in the last 24 hours, power plants and desalination plants in Kuwait.
And Iran claims it has disrupted commercial shipping and targeted maritime infrastructure. So while the US rejects those claims, so how difficult is it to verify and respond to incidents in such an environment?
Well, part of what we're seeing happen now, and I think is a very positive development, is it's no longer this sort of tit for tat situation that we've had really since the original ceasefire back in April, where the Iranians will interdict a ship that doesn't have its permission to transit the Strait of Hormuz. The United States would respond to that in some fashion. The Iranians would then respond by striking out at some of the regional countries, in particular in the GCC. What we're seeing now is different, and what we're seeing is the United States actively dismantling any sort of command and control, any sort of power projection capabilities. We can say the strait is open. I think technically you can say the strait is open, but if the mariners that need to sail in that strait or the insurance companies that insure them don't feel it's safe, then they're not going to be able to transit. And so it's very clear when the strait is open, so a ship can sail through. It doesn't have to talk to the Iranians, to the IRGC. It doesn't have to pay a toll to get through. So we'll know when we get to that point where they're no longer interdicting that traffic. But I think you're going to see pressure across all the domains of warfare and economic and diplomatic activity to make sure that the Iranians do open the Strait of Hormuz. at the end of the day, we're really at a point now where the international community has a couple of options. One, they can accept a Strait of Hormuz that's run by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, or two, they can have an international strait that's open to the world like all the other straits in the world.
Mr. Miller, having to command U.S. Fifth Fleet, so how would you assess the challenges facing U.S. naval forces in maintaining freedom or navigation under current conditions?
Well, this is a geographic situation in the strait where the situation actually favors the Iranians. It's easier to close a narrow strait like the Strait of Hormuz, or to contest ships that are traveling through that strait than it is to defend them. But we have a lot of good assets. It would be a better effort. We're in an international effort. It would be a better effort if it was backed up by a United Nations resolution. There have been a couple of resolutions made, put forward in the last several months, and they've been rejected by the Russians and the Chinese. So I think it's helpful if they get on board with following international law and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. But it's a difficult task, but it's also a task that the United States Navy is capable of doing, both through the use of maritime power and then with of course, our great partners, the Air Force, the Army, and the Marine Corps, which is actually part of our Navy. I think we can open up windows of opportunity for ships to safely transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Not to say it's an easy mission, not to say it's something that we would want to do for an indefinite period of time, but it can be done, and it needs to be done until Iran decides that they're going to stop attacking innocent ships.
And Mr. Miller, the United States claims that it is attacking Iran's military and also maritime capabilities. So how effective is this strategy likely to be in reducing Iran's operational capacity? And yeah.
Well, they retain, and they will retain for really till the end of the conflict, some military capacity because of the asymmetric nature of their forces. So small boats that are armed with machine guns or RPGs or explosively laden small boats and drones, and to a lesser extent, anti-ship cruise missiles. So we're having good success with the cruise missiles. They can't attack really from the air with the exception of the drones. And the drones have a considerable range to them. So those drone launching sites that are attacking ships that are in the strait can be hundreds of kilometers away from the strait itself. And the task of going out and finding those so we don't have to interdict individual drones as they're on an attack profile toward a civilian merchant ship is not an easy task, but it is one that's within our capability. But we need all of the armed forces capabilities that we have in the United States, and we certainly could use some help from the international community.
Many thanks, Mr. Miller.